Oh yeah! Change is one of the great facts of life. I stand before you in a different shirt every time I change my clothes, but it's still me, right? Or if you want to really experience this, go to a funeral, and you know how they always show the video of the person as a little baby, and then a cute little kid, and then getting married and getting older and the whole thing, and you think, wow, that's the same person all the way through. Or I think back, it doesn't seem like that long ago in the 80s when my wife and I got married, and hey, big hair was in. Not anymore. I mean, we both have much less hair than we did back then. Or we're just shipping my son off to college right now. Oh, big painful change for me. I'm telling you all of this just to say change is a fact of life, okay? And it seems to me that in life, as in Greek, the secret of sanity is to embrace the change, okay? Because you can fight the change. You can say, I hate change, it's stupid, I wish everything would just sit still. But things don't sit still in life or in Greek. And what we will see is that the beauty of Greek is the way that the words change. In fact, the way that the words morph, right, morphology, the study of how the words change form, this is really one of the masterpieces of the language. Because the forms are regular, they are grammatically like stunning, and it's really a beautiful thing once you begin to recognize the patterns. Now at first it will seem random, you'll hate it, I promise, but as you get into it, you'll start to see these patterns and you'll begin to really appreciate the beauty of this great language. All right, so today what we're going to do is just look at the patterns of change in nouns. How do nouns change form, morphology, right? How do they change form to tell us their case, number, and gender? And we'll see that the key is to look at the very last few letters of the word, that these will change to tell us whether it's the subject or the object or the indirect object, or to indicate possession. All right, now there are three primary patterns of change. We call them declensions, first, second, and third declension. Today we look at first declension. Take out your Greek master chart and turn to page 2 and find this chart, the noun endings chart. This is a chart you will become very familiar with. This will be your buddy because with this chart you can determine the case, the number, singular or plural, right, or the gender of just about any noun. And these are the endings that are tacked on to the nouns. And as I said, there are three patterns. First declension, which is this column right here, which we will focus on today. Second declension, which are these two columns, and third declension, which are these two columns in the yellow here. So let's look at first declension. So let's meet our first Greek noun. Oh, I hope you're not getting choked up and all emotional about this. This is a big moment for you. Let me introduce you. Meet arche. Arche means appropriately beginning. It's our first noun. And in fact, when we get to John 1, the first words will be in arche, in the beginning. So arche. Now, let's take a little time with this noun and make sure we understand what's going on. It is a first declension noun, meaning it follows this first pattern, and it is feminine. First declension nouns are almost always feminine. Notice also that first declension nouns end with alpha or eta. Now in the singular here, you'll see that they shift. It could be alpha, it could be eta. So that may be a little confusing, but don't let it be. It's just the way it is, okay? Now look at this. How many forms of arche are there here? Count them up. 8, right? Now why 8? Well, think about it. It has to be able to show itself in all four cases, nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative. But it also has to be able to have a different form for the singular and the plural. So the plural forms are different than the singular forms. So if you think it 4 cases, 2 numbers, 4 times 2 is 8. 8 forms of every Greek noun. Now if you can get that through your head and understand why, you're well on your way. Greek nouns have 8 different forms. Now English, look at English. Only 2, right? Beginning, 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 beginning. And then in the plural, beginnings. So English just has 2 forms, a singular form and a plural form. But Greek has 8 because it shows you the case, all 4 cases in the singular, and all 4 cases in the plural. Make sense? Notice what English does, by the way, to compensate. It uses these little helping words, of a beginning, to a beginning. In the accusative, we don't need a helping word in English, but of and to. So we'll find that English uses helping words where Greek is much more elegant in a way, just changing the ending around a little bit to communicate so much more. Isn't it lovely? All right. Let's say these words together and just practice saying them out loud. Arche. Repeat after me, would you please? Arche. Arches. Arche. Archein. Archai. Archon. Archais, archas. Okay, do you see what's happening here? What's happening is the root, the little stem of this word is staying the same, arch. And what's changing is the endings. And they change by these very regular patterns. And so once you learn these patterns for arche, you'll know them for just about every first declension feminine noun. So it's the patterns, okay? That's what's really going to help you. The stem stays the same, and the endings change. So every time you come across the word arche, it will be feminine, and it will follow this pattern. It is a first declension feminine noun. Now, to make sure you understand this, okay, so if you see arche like this, you know it's the subject of the sentence. It's in the nominative case and is acting as the subject of the sentence. If you see arches like this, you know it's in the genitive case and it's acting to show you possession of a beginning. If you see arche with this iota subscript like that, big clue for you that you're in the dative, which means it's acting as the indirect object of the sentence, or well, as we've seen, there's a lot more flexibility for the dative. And if you see archein, it's acting as the object of the verb. It's in the accusative case. And then we have our plural forms here. Archai means a plural beginnings as the subject. It's in the nominative case. Archon, with this omega noon ending, means it's in the genitive plural of beginnings. Archais means it's acting as the indirect object or one of these other helper words, and it means 2 beginnings. And then archas means beginnings. In English, we make no difference in English between the nominative and the accusative form in English. But that's an English issue, not Greek. Greek makes it nice and clear. Here's the subject, here's the object. And by the way, it's plural. Isn't it great, these patterns? You'll learn to love these patterns and see how regular and beautiful Greek is as we go along. Watch how slick this is now with some Greek sentences, okay? Hamartiai luusin psuchas. Sins destroy souls. I have put the endings in red here to make it very easy for you. Can you see why hamartia is sin, but hamartii is sins, plural? You see why? Here's your alpha iota ending. This tells you this is the subject of the sentence and it's plural. I. Sins destroy psuchas. Now you'll see there's an alpha sigma here and an alpha sigma here. That's a little confusing, but the context can make it pretty clear, doesn't it? That sins destroy of souls wouldn't make sense. Sins destroy souls. Notice alpha sigma means it's the accusative and it's plural. Sins destroy souls. So if I were to put some tags here, here's your subject and here's your object in the accusative case. So sins destroy souls. Now look at this sentence below here. Hamartias luusin psuchai. This sentence doesn't make a great deal of sense to us perhaps in English, but if we were to read this in English, we would say this is sins destroy souls, right? Because word order tells us that this is the subject. The subject comes before the verb in English, and then the object comes afterwards. Not so in Greek. We tell the subject by the ending, not by the word order. This is why this is so important to recognize this. So the translation of this would not be sins destroy souls, but souls, because this is the subject, right? It's in the nominative case, plural. Souls destroy sins. That's the accusative form right there. All right? And let's just look at one more. Hamartia lue tein psuchen. Here we have alpha as the ending. So notice that the ending here is just the singular ending. So it's not sins, but sin. Sin destroys the soul. Soul here, archein, there it is, right here, our accusative form, ein. Sin destroys the soul. And we know this isn't soul destroys the sin because here's our nominative case, that means that it's the subject. Here's our accusative case, that means that it's the object, right? So we could tack these labels on, okay? So important to recognize these endings because they tell you, well, here's the subject, here's the object. Word order doesn't do it for you in Greek. The endings do it for you. Here is a slightly more complicated sentence. Let's look at the endings here. He ecclesia eche tein exousian tes basileas. The church has the authority of the kingdom. Okay, now how do we figure this one out? What ending are we looking at here with this alpha? Nominative, right? Nominative singular. So here's our subject, the church. The church is having. It's doing the action of this verb. The church has, let's put a little label on this, nominative, has the authority. Now what is this ending? On. Here it is right here. That's the accusative. The church has authority. So this is the direct object. This is in the accusative case here. The church has the authority. Now what's going on with this one? Os. Notice there's a bit of a clue here with the article, which we'll look at later. Articles are really helpful once we get into those. But here we have os, the authority. And we wouldn't expect another accusative right in a row here. So this is a genitive, the authority of the kingdom. And so with the genitive, we use the key word of. And here we have the article the. So the church has the authority of the kingdom. So do you see how these endings are shifting around to tell us how this sentence should be put together? Now, the way I laid this one out was in English word order, so that was really easy. But, hey, look, in Greek you could say it this way. Tein exousian tes basileas he ecclesia eche. And if you wanted to emphasize the authority of the kingdom the church has, you might bring it to the front of the sentence like this, so it gives you that little flexibility to do a little nuance there. But notice this tells you we're looking at the object. So here's our subject. The church has the authority of the kingdom. Tes basileas, still genitive here, right? So here's our subject, nominative case. Here is our object, accusative case. Here is our possession, genitive case. But notice here, okay, the word order is messed up, and that would, like as English speakers, we wouldn't say the authority of the kingdom the church has. That just doesn't add up to us. But in Greek, that's very common to do something like that. And how will you make sense of this? You've got to recognize these endings. Got to find your subject. The church has the authority of the kingdom. At the risk of beating this point into the ground, let's look at one more. He cardia tes hamartias mise aletheon. The heart of sin hates truth. Okay, how do we know the subject? Well, there we go. There's our nominative case. So that's the heart of, and then here's our genitive form. Notice we have this article to help us out. It's not translated in English, and we'll get into this when we talk about articles. The Greek article and English article are different, so we'll talk about that soon. But the heart of sin hates truth. Here's the object. It's in the accusative case. The heart of sin hates truth. But this sentence could be ordered this way in Greek and mean the same thing. Truth hates the heart of sin. Now, right, in English, that would be very different. Now we have truth doing the hating because it comes before the verb. We put the subject before the verb in English. But in Greek, we define the subject by this ending, this ending, the nominative case. So the heart of sin hates truth. In Greek, if you were to say it, aletheon mise he cardia tes hamartias, in other words, say it this way, you would be bringing truth to the front to emphasize truth. The heart of sin hates truth. So you would be emphasizing it by bringing it to the front of the sentence. You can do that in Greek because, one more time, Greek does not tell you the roles that the words play in the sentence by the order of the words. It tells you the roles they play in the sentence primarily by these endings. Here's your subject, he cardia, the heart. Here's some possession, tes hamartias, right? There's our os ending. Whoops, didn't mean to move that around. Our os ending tells us that it's genitive, so we use the keyword of. The heart of sin hates, and here's our direct object, truth, on. That tells us it's the accusative case, it's the object. Those are some pretty easy sentences, weren't they? I mean, you probably could have figured those out even if the words had not been changing form to show you the roles that they played in these sentences. But as we get into some actual Greek texts, you will see that it becomes very important to recognize these endings. Here's why. As an English reader, when I pick up a Greek text, at least when I first started, it looked like a bomb went off and blew the whole thing to bits. I mean, there were words and fragments all over the place. There didn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to the order. Well, there is, but here's the beauty of Greek. Because Greek does not rely on word order to tell us the grammatical function of each word, because Greek uses the morphology, the way the words change to tell us how the sentence should be put together, it gives Greek the ability to arrange words in lots of different patterns. And that allows us to be much more expressive and to say things in more nuanced ways in Greek than we can in English. It's one of the great beauties of the language. But at first, to an English speaker, it's just really frustrating because it just seems like the words are coming out in random order. See, that's why it's so important to recognize these endings. To see that's the subject, oh, there's the object, here's the indirect object, that's possession. The endings are the clue to this. Let's look at some examples of that in John 1. All right, let's look at some nouns in the wild. How awesome is that? Okay, so in arche, in the beginning. Here's our ending. What ending is that? Dative, right? And as a matter of fact, we'll find that when a noun is the object of a preposition, that preposition determines its case. So in, the preposition in always takes the dative. In the beginning was the word. Here we see it again. This one was in arche, in the beginning, with God. And again, there's our dative ending. So in always takes the dative. All right, let's move along here. In him was life. Life was in him. Now, this ending here, subject, right? That's a nominative case. Life was in him. And again, here we have the nominative case. There's our nominative ending. The light in the darkness, skatia. That's another dative, and it's dative because it's the object of in. Okay, how about this one? The darkness did not overcome it. Skatia. What ending is that? Nominative, right? So there's our subject. The darkness, it, not it overcame or understood. That's an interesting verb right there. But here's our subject because it's in the nominative case. Moving on down here. This man came eis martyrion. What case is this? Accusative, right? Eis martyrion. Now, eis takes the accusative, so no surprise there. Moving on down to our next first declension noun. Here's a good little phrase right here that shows the case and how it works. He gave to them authority. So what case is this? Accusative, right? Accusative singular. So he gave authority to them. This is dative case. We don't recognize that form yet. We will soon. But notice here, accusative case, direct object. He gave authority to them. Moving on down. We beheld the glory. Look at this phrase right here. We beheld, we is the subject, beheld the glory. So this is again what case? Accusative, receiving the action of the verb. We beheld the glory. And then it repeats, glory as of the only begotten, full of grace and of truth. Okay, what case is this? This is a genitive, os, full of grace and of truth. So we use our keyword of with the genitive. Okay, do you see how these endings are showing us how these words work in the sentences? We see here, okay, the law came through Moses. Grace and truth through Jesus Christ came to be. So what is the ending here? Hey, aletheia. Grace and truth are the subject of this sentence. So this is in the nominative case. Truth came to be through Jesus Christ. How about this one? This is the testimony. Another subject. The testimony is this. This is the testimony. This construction right here is called predicate nominative, but we'll get into that later. Okay, how about this one? I am a voice, ego phone. Here again, this is the subject. That's the nominative case. Recognize this case? Dative, right? There's our iota subscript, should give it away. Here's our preposition in, which always takes the dative. All right. How about this one? The Lamb of God who takes away the sin. So the Lamb takes away sin, acting here as the object. So it is in what case? Accusative, right. How about this one? The Spirit descended like a dove. So I have seen the Spirit descending as a dove. So he saw the Spirit descending as a dove. So here it is again acting as the object of the seeing. I saw it descend like a dove. Moving on down here. Okay, they stayed the day. They stayed that day. So again, what case? Accusative is receiving the object of the staying. They stayed the day. How about right here? Hora ein hos decate. It was like the 10th hour. So here's our subject, right? What case? Hora. What's that look like? Nominative. So that's our subject. Almost through with all of the first declension nouns in John 1. Okay. The next day, he wanted to come into Galilee. Eis Galilean. What case? Accusative. And as a matter of fact, eis with the accusative means into, right? Eis takes the accusative. Philip was from Bethsaida. Now this is a strange form of the genitive, and sometimes nouns have strange forms. Let's not get too worked up about it. But apa from Bethsaida, just notice this is first declension, but it's an odd form. Apa, though, with the genitive means from Bethsaida. Just a couple of more here, and these are determined by the preposition. Hupa is a preposition that takes the accusative case, right? Recognize the accusative singular ending there. And hupakato takes the genitive case. Hopefully you recognize that genitive ending. So there you have it, first declension. I told you it would be spectacular. Isn't it amazing? I hope you are enjoying this actually and beginning to see how Greek grammar works and maybe starting to understand even your English grammar a little bit better. Just be sure you can recognize those first declension endings. Practice in the workbook, take the quiz, make sure you have these down, and love this change, all this beautiful change, Greek morphology.